Welcome to this edition of Meet America. I'm Annie Griffin, your host, and I regret to have to tell you that Trump is poised to kill our wild horses and burros. He's pulling funding from the BLM in rural areas so that there will be a emergency action needed to sell these horses off to slaughter. And this is totally unnecessary. We have the means to, through our tax dollars, to support these horses, to return them to the herd areas that were originally allocated to them, and that the BLM has taken away without any congressional approval. These are all horses you're seeing waiting to go to slaughter in the Canadian slaughter plant for horses. These are all the forgotten ones, the slave horses that were companion animals and worked hard all their lives for the owners, and the owners deserted them for the last $100 they could get from an auction. And, so it's very heartbreaking to watch these poor horses waiting their death. They can hear the neighs and the screams of the horses being slaughtered that weren't properly shot. And the reason I'm showing you this footage is because I'm hoping there's someone out there who has money that is willing to come forth and start saving our wild horses and putting them on private lands and allowing them to propagate and breed until we can get back the lawful lands that belong to them under the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act. Everything right now is so corrupt in our government that there's no judges, there's no law for any of us anymore. And it's really the final hour for all of us in this country. Our country has basically been taken over by, in my opinion, criminals and non-caring sociopaths that don't care about us or our animals. And therefore, if there's anyone out there that really cares about what's happening to our wildlife and wants to do something, but is frustrated and doesn't know what to do, I'm going to help you figure it out. And one of my favorite groups happens to be the American Wild Horse Institute. And why I love this group so much is they're going against all the other groups out there that are getting your money, your tax dollars. And they believe that these horses are not overpopulated on the public lands. They've been out there fighting tooth and nail to make sure they don't get rounded up. And they have bought land where the stallion mares can still be wild horses. And they need your help. These other organizations are using PZP-22, which is a pesticide, and the patent is from the Humane Society of the United States. They developed the patent, and they deny that they're making any money on it, but let's face it, patents are, you make money on patents. That's what you do. So long story short is that the BLM uses this PZP on our wild herds. And what has happened as a result of that, according to Ginger Catherines, who went out and studied Cloud, the very famous wild horse that was on PBS for many years and followed the bands and their habits, she found that what happens is when a mare is PZP'd and she's no longer fertile, she'll go outside her band looking for stallions outside the band to to get her pregnant. And so this causes great stress for her band stallion, because he can't get her pregnant. And so there's a lot of fighting and injury, and it's totally destroying our wild horses as we know it. And that's not what the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act is all about. So the Wild Horse Institute is trying to get money to buy lands where they can rescue what little stallion bloodlines are left and preserve them. And so they're being bashed by these other groups that have gone along with BLM and are saying, well, we have to make them infertile and, you know, reduce their numbers. And as a result, we are losing and we are allowing the extermination of our wild horses and burros. Now, where does this all come from? It comes from your meat habit. Unfortunately, the cattle ranchers out there that want to use these public lands, they've greatly infringed upon the wild horses herd areas. And BLM has been greatly influenced by them, and so they go along with the ranchers. And of course, the ranchers are very rich on your meat habit because you're giving them millions and millions of dollars every time you go to the grocery store and you buy meat. You're probably buying it from public lands, or you're buying it from somewhere in Brazil where they're cutting down the rainforest. So these cheap burger outlets are really the problem. And what I'm asking you to do is to do two things. Is one, to support the American Horse Institute so that they can start buying land and put these, our treasured wild horses on these lands to breed and to live until we can get our public lands back. And the second thing is to buy from private ranchers who are growing their beef on their private ranchers. These private ranchers are doing the right thing. And for you to give your money to them is a great way of saying to the ranchers that are infringing upon the wild horse and burro lands, is saying, I'm not going to buy from you. So that's what I'm asking you to do today. And I'm going to give you, I'm asking you as caring people who, to first curb your meat intake, and also contact private ranchers raising beef on private lands. There's an example right there, Terra Firma Farms. They're in Petaluma, and they're really trying to do the right thing. They're trying to grow ecologically. They move their beef, their cows from one pasture to another. They're really trying very hard. So these are the people that are saving our public lands, are literally saving our wild horses and our burros and all of the other wildlife that the public ranchers, the ranchers that are using our public lands, they are the ones that are asking BLM and influencing BLM and the Congress to remove all wildlife that competes with their grazing ability, or predators that may take their wildlife. And so even though these ranchers get subsidies, tax write-offs for any animal that they've lost due to predatorship, they still want more. And to support these people and give them money and not send a message, no, we want our public lands for our wildlife. And if you're going to abuse that privilege and say to the BLM, oh no, we can't have any predators so that we can keep the wild horse populations down. If we can't, if you're going to ask for more grazing land on these herd areas that belong to the horses, then if we can't, if the ranchers using our public lands are going to abuse that privilege, then our only kind of tool that we have is our money, saying, okay, well, we're not going to give you our money anymore. We are going to support private ranchers, and I'm going to give my money to them. So that makes the private ranchers being able to buy more private land and to sustain themselves and to do the right thing for our ecology. You see, basically what Trump is saying, I think, without even knowing it, without even knowing what he's probably saying, but what he's really doing without even knowing it is he's saying you're on your own. All of you are on your own. If you want good energy, put solar panels on your roof. If you want clean air, take a bus. Support the transit system. But I'm not going to be a part of this. It's up to you. And so on every level now, it really is up to us folks to do our part to try to save what we can, what's left. And so I'm giving you the tools for that. And so you can go on YouTube, you can go on Google, and you can search for private ranchers in your area, and you can contact them and you can say, where is an outlet that I can buy your beef? Now, that is a bit of a task, but if Americans aren't willing now to work really hard, I mean, we are in World War III. This is a war really against ourselves and our consumption habits. We have been used to being able to give our tax dollars to a government agency, and they're supposed to take care of our clean water, and they're supposed to take care of this and that. That's not happening anymore. We all know now what happened at Flint, Michigan. We all know the corruption that's going on, and we know that this government doesn't care at all about us. And Trump's symbol of that is the fact that healthcare now, the elderly are going to pay the lion's share of premiums, and the rich pay the least. And Trump's promise that you will not have to worry about if you have a pre-existing condition, the insurance companies can't refuse you. Well, he's taken that away too. And it's up to you to contact your senators and let them know that this is not something that you want. And the only thing we really have, the only tool, is our money. So if we can make the people who are doing a good thing for our planet wealthy, as we have with the organic industry, then we're going to win this battle. So I'm asking everyone, please, to do those things, and to also to contact your Congress members and your senators. Senator Patty Murray is a very, very powerful senator in Washington. She's in charge of seeing what ways she can slash the budget. So she needs to be called, and she needs to be told, look, I don't want my wild horses going with my tax dollars. I don't want them shot in so-called a humane method. I want my tax dollars going to save these horses, returning them to the areas where they've been rounded up by BLM that said, oh, there's too many of them, and there isn't. If you go out trying to find wild horses, you're not going to find any. It's ridiculous. And when you do go out, you see that the ecology is intact, even though they have written up that it's not. And I've done that personally, so I can speak for that. And I'm going to show you a short video clip I took of wild horses not stepping on any brush at all. That will come a little later. So Senator Patty Murray is a very influential, very powerful person to contact. Senator Cantwell, she's on this Senate Committee for Energy and Natural Resources. They're the one that can actually tell BLM what they can and cannot do with our wild horses, and she won't even respond to me. But she has been very good about making sure that our tax dollars do not go to supporting horse slaughter in this country so far. So she sort of teeters, and so she needs a lot of people to call her and say, wait a minute, I want my tax dollars saying to BLM, you need to return these horses, the 13,000 that are in holding areas right now at $5 a day. Those horses need to be returned, and the 22 million acres that BLM took away under this nebulous term of turning herd areas into herd management areas. God knows what that means, but when I called the advocates for the West, they told me that that was kind of a nebula, and just move these horses, and that's basically what they're doing. So having said that, people, old folks now who have large holdings and ranches, and their children are no longer interested in these ranches, they can donate their land to the Land, Horse, and Wildlife Preserve, and they can still live there, and their children can live there as long as they live within the guidelines of the Land, Horse, and Wildlife Preserve. So this is kind of what we're working for, but the American Wild Institute, I appreciate them so much what they're doing. And I hope you'll visit their website. I hope you'll give them money to go and rescue these horses that Trump is now poised to send to slaughter via slashing the budget, the BLM budget. And, you know, BLM is poised to round up thousands more this year. And at the same time, they're saying, well, we can't afford to. Well, the roundups alone cost thousands and thousands of taxpayers' dollars, while meat inspectors are laid off and your meat inspection program is broken. It just goes on and on. The criminal activity that's going on, the non-caring for America and Americans. And so I'm here to say, let's put a stop to that. Let's support private ranchers. Let's send a big message to the cattle ranchers that if they're going to be just aren't going to give them money. I don't know how else to say it. Now, the next segment, I'm going to prove to you that BLM's program policy for shooting these wild horses, horses move their head. And so even though they'll have them in a halter tied to a post or in a trailer, which is what Jason Luderman told me the policy would be, if they miss the dime-sized mark on their head, then the horse goes into this terrific suffering mode. So I am going to ask you, if you do not believe me, please go to YouTube and type in Toile Francais, and then you want to do anything about it. But you can go there and see for yourself. So that's not an option. They also say that they'll chemically do it, which means, I guess, they'll euthanize them as a vet would euthanize them. However, I don't trust BLM. I don't trust their budget constraints to really do that in a humane way. So they'll probably cut some corners because that would be expositions. Out there that are rescuing horses. To me, they're the ones that are trying to save the bloodlines. They don't want to castrate the stallions. They keep the bands together what they can. And Ann Novak, to me, is just an amazing person, battling this as best she can, and being criticized by other organizations that are, in my opinion, competing for money out there. And of course, you have to make the final decision. I hope you do. Search the internet and whoever you like. But I believe we have to save these bloodlines. And so give them the tools, the money to be able to do that would be a great thing. The next thing is to contact your Congress member, and that's the switchboard number. Ask them to co-sponsor the SAFE Act, which is Safeguard America's Food Export Act, and ask them to stop horse slaughter in the United States. You don't want the poisonous meat. You don't believe that we should slaughter our companion animals. And just remember, $124 million a year are spent on killing our wildlife, and this is all due to ranchers. The ranchers want every last blade of grass. That's why you don't see the bison out there. That's why the BLM kills the bison and hazes them, and at Yellowstone, that whole situation. I want to thank Congressman Panetta for co-sponsoring the SAFE Act, H.R. 113, that would stop horse slaughter in the United States. It would also stop horses from being shipped to foreign countries for slaughter. It's a huge industry. Congressman Aderholt, he is from Alabama. He is on the Appropriations Committee. Very powerful Congress member who believes that we need to bring horse slaughter back to the United States. And he's on Facebook. You can go there and comment on his Facebook page that you do not believe that horse slaughter and feeding poisonous meat to the public is a good idea. And wild horse roundups cost taxpayers about $80 million a year. That's their budget right now. 600 meat inspectors have been laid off due to budget cuts, while millions spent on rounding up these wild horses, and now they want to send them to slaughter. So this has been a plan for a long time in the works, folks. And the BLM, working with the ranchers who utilize our public lands for a long time, have been this has been their plan according to a lot of horse activists, and I believe that as well. So in my opinion, and the opinion of many horse activists, that is what's going on. Now, Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell, very powerful senators that need thousands and thousands of calls saying, please do not allow my tax dollars to reinstate horse slaughter, because they're being lobbied by the ranchers to reinstate it. And the ranchers are saying, well, it's more humane to slaughter them here in the United States than it is sending them off to Canada. Well, the truth of the matter is they're still going to be put in transport trucks by the 24 at a time, kicking and screaming and God knows what, breaking each other's legs. They're still going to be transported across state lines. They're still going to be slaughtered in the most heinous ways because they process them alive when they can't shoot them properly. And so we are now going to witness that. So here's a trusting horse looking around. You can see its head moving. As with BLM, the horse will be so-called restrained. And I'm not going to show you it being shot, but I'm just giving you an example of how the horse moves its head. And so this particular horse was shot 2 times before it went unconscious. So this horse is now entering the kill area very cautiously, someone's companion horse. And I'm urging people to please contact private ranchers and buy your beef from them so that we can still have wild horses and burros on our public lands. And we can still have elk and bison and wolves and deer and all the wild horses that we need to have. And so you can see him moving his head. I'm not going to show you the actual footage because I know you don't want it, but this, you'll turn away, and that's what really bothers me, is you can't look at it, but what are you doing about it? Are you doing anything about it? So it's so important for you to understand the suffering of these horses, and that's what's going to happen with our wild horses. Trump is calling it humane euthanasia. What a nice, calm word. We can all relax and, oh yeah, humane euthanasia. It's not, and it won't be, and it isn't. They're processing horses alive because they can't kill them properly. And so you can go on YouTube and watch for yourself what goes on with these horses. And please do your part. Do your part. And when you do, spiritually, you become uplifted and you become closer to God. If you don't believe in God, it doesn't matter. You become closer to yourself because you know you did something good. You did something good, and that's what's so important for all of us, is that wonderful feeling that we are helping in some way, because we're all innately very, very good. And there's very few sociopaths that don't care whether they do something good or not. But the more good you do, the more you retrieve your soul. The more bad you do, your soul goes away from you. And that's why there are sociopaths, because their soul has been just totally taken away from them because they've done so many cruel acts. They've become hardened, and so they don't feel anymore. And that's what happens to them. So please, do your part. Don't eat meat. And if you have to, buy from private ranchers. And every day that you say no to a burger, and you don't buy a T-bone steak at a grocery store, you are helping our wildlife, and you're